is just going to be a little about myself. I have been practicing chaos magic as a member of the Illuminates of Thanateros for the last 5 years, and a little bit before that. Before I started practicing chaos magic, I practiced lots of different paradigms, starting when I was about 13 years old. So I have a lot of experience and have studied a lot of different things. When I was, I think, 38, I decided it might be fun to practice magic with other people. And that's when I learned about the IoT. And I looked into a few other orders, but the IoT really felt like the best fit for me. So I applied and eventually became a member. Does anyone know about chaos magic already? You're familiar with it? A little? A little? Would you say that you practice it? Yeah. So you're probably going to know everything I'm going to say. You can also correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't know everything. For you guys who are more unfamiliar with it, what has drawn you to learn more about it? Either of you?
It seems, from what we can tell, a little more like open-ended, I guess. Like a little, like using things that are from all kinds of areas, I guess. It doesn't. It's not so strong rigid at those.
Absolutely.
I guess.
Yeah.
Probably that's more. It's more driven by how you personally interact with more rather than being more prescriptive to a particular set system.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of misinformation, especially online, about what chaos magic is and what it means. And I think that's because the word chaos sounds kind of edgy. It is not necessarily, and I'll say the things that I think it is and isn't, but you will perhaps disagree with me, because if you ask 10 chaos magicians to define chaos magic, you might get 10 pretty different answers. But it's not sloppy magic. It's not just disorder or chaos for the sake of chaos, as in randomness, you know. It's not another name for Discordianism, though I certainly know some chaos magicians dabble in Discordianism, do Eris workings. It isn't just jacking off to sigils, though that is featured in quite a lot of chaos magic. And it isn't just pop culture magic, where, you know, I think Grant Morrison kind of popularized the idea of the hyper sigil and associated his comic book characters with the concept of using pop culture as a vehicle for your magic, or using, I don't know, Pokemon as the pantheon of gods or whatever. Though some chaos magicians absolutely practice in pop culture paradigms. Typically, chaos magic will entail the avoidance of dogma. There is no prescriptive technique, prescriptive ritual. And within chaos magic, especially in the pact, one of the assertions that we say as a neophyte is there may be no ultimate truth. So the idea is very based in the concept that we don't necessarily know anything, so we can't be dogmatic about anything. There is a primacy of personal experience, as you were saying. There is this idea that my experience as the magician is going to be more valuable to me than anything I read in the book. And sure, I might get ideas from the book, but the book isn't going to necessarily reveal the truth to me. It's only through my own experience and work that I will see what works, through my own personal experimentation. There is, I think, for a lot of chaos magicians, a drive toward technical excellence, where we have this urge to experiment and to refine our experiments. So if we experiment with a paradigm and it works, but what if we tweak this? And what if we add something else? And what if we take something away? How refined can we make it? How much better can it be? And I think a lot of chaos magicians end up experiencing something of a deconditioning of the self, because we use this avoidance of dogma and the concept that there is no ultimate truth. And that can extend to one's self-image in such a way that selves can be put on and taken off as a tool to be used in real life, in mundane life as well. Chaos magic is not a paradigm, it's a meta paradigm. There are no, as I said, no prescriptive rituals, no very specific techniques. It is a lens through which we can view magic and experiment with its workings. It was originated in the 1970s in England alongside punk rock. And I think it shares a lot of the punk rock ethos. There is a very DIY kind of aspect, this primacy of personal experience. It's much more meaningful to make your own crude magical tool than to go spend $500 on something. Like, your thing that you made is going to feel more magical and special than something that you ordered online. There is also an anti-authoritarian streak within chaos magic that I think punk shares, because we put so much primacy on personal experience. We are not going to look to an authority to tell us how to do magic. And within the IoT, we don't have a hierarchical kind of order where the lower degrees answer to the higher degrees. So this kind of punk rock ethos, I think, infuses chaos magic even today. And I said before that the word chaos seems to throw a lot of people off because it just sounds like punk rock. And I think originally it was intended to be the counter up to cosmos, to cosmic order. Many paradigms of magic have us believing in a very orderly way that things work. If we do this kind of working, we'll get results ×3, because there's somebody up there saying, oh, you did baneful magic, it's going to come back to you. You know, if you work within paradigms with deities, then the deity themselves might be in charge of you, your results. And if you do the correct devotions, then you receive the boons. Chaos magic says, well, look at the universe. There's wild shit happening out there. There is no cosmic order. The further out you go away from Earth, the stranger things get. So maybe instead of trying to tap into this idea that there is a cosmic unfolding that we can align ourselves with, we can actually align ourselves with the randomness of the universe and creation in order to nudge reality in the direction that we want it to go. Does that make sense? So the fundamental philosophy, I think, is 2 pillars. The first is that belief is the tool. Belief is a tool that's malleable, and a lot of chaos magicians practice flexibility of belief, where you will believe something, you'll trick yourself into believing something you don't believe for a while, just to practice believing something. Believe in Sasquatch, believe in astrology. I did that, and then now I actually believe in astrology. I did it a little too well. So belief is a tool that we can use, and this allows us to move into and out of paradigms when we need to. We can try on a paradigm, believe in it wholeheartedly, and when we find something else or get bored or whatever, we can move on to the next thing. It's great for people with ADHD. The other part of chaos magic is the altered state of consciousness. So back when Pete Carroll and Ray Sherwin and Dave Lee and all of the early chaos magicians were starting to experiment with what is now called chaos magic, they were looking at older forms of magic, like the Golden Dawn and all of the ceremonial kinds of magic, and saying, well, this stuff works, but there are so many other things out there that work. There's shamanism works, the Hindu devotional magic works, Tantra works. Like there are all of these things that work. So it isn't the special words that you say. It isn't the certain God that you're praying to. It isn't the certain color robe or candle or incense. There's something else here that works every time. What is it? And so they stripped away all of the trappings to try to find the core, like the nucleus of what causes magic to actually be effective, and came to the conclusion that it is the attainment of an altered state of consciousness and intense belief and concentration in your own magic, in the magic working. Everything else that we use in ritual is just there to trick us into believing it ourselves. So when you go and do light all of the candles and put on the black robe and chant and get, really deep into a trance state, all of these things work together to tell the deepest layers of your consciousness, I'm doing something meaningful. I'm doing something special. This isn't everyday life. This is something that's going to work. And that's actually where the magic happens, is in that space where the mind is deeply focused on the will, and also everything else has fallen away. And we can see this altered state of consciousness combined with concentration across paradigms. If you look at things like shamanism, then they'll be using dancing, drumming, chanting, maybe some psychedelic drugs, and they will enter this altered state of consciousness to perform magic. In places like the southern US, it might be charismatic Christianity, with a preacher preaching hellfire and the congregation speaking in tongues and starting to seize, and everyone is getting into this fevered, intense state. And in that state, they feel that they have seen God, that they have made contact with the divine. So you can also see it in like the esoteric arms of yoga, where yogis do intense breathing exercises, visualization, and enter a very altered state of consciousness, simply sitting still and breathing. But they too are attaining that magical union with the divine kind of place. And some people say you get magic powers if you do it enough. I haven't done it enough yet. I can't levitate. So in chaos magic, there are no rules, except rules that are self-imposed. So a lot of times, I've given a few classes here, and afterwards, people often ask me questions about things, because I've been studying for a long time. I've read a lot of books. I've done a lot of magic. So they assume that I know the answers, but I don't, because there aren't answers. The answer is, if you believe it, it might happen. The harder you believe it, the more likely it is to happen. So when someone asks me, like, well, if I do blood magic, am I going to be tied to the entity that I offer my blood to forever? Are you? Do you think you are? If you think you are, you might be. I don't know. Maybe you need to experiment with that and find out for yourself. Or, I don't know, someone else asked me, well, if I mess up the chant that I'm doing, if I'm doing like a goetic evocation and I mess up, like, is something horrible going to happen to me? Like, well, I hope not. But don't believe that it is, or you're kind of putting the juju on yourself there, So I think it can be both like really freeing and also really frightening to be working in a paradigm where the only rules are those that you make for yourself. And I think whether it's freeing or scary depends on your personality. For me, it feels very freeing. For some, they're like, I need someone else to tell me if this is okay. I don't know. We all probably saw the 8-rayed Chaos Star on the flyer. That is, it does have its roots in fantasy fiction. So Michael Moorcock used it in fantasy novels, what was that, the 70s? It's also been used in Warhammer. The chaos star represents the magician's ability to move in any direction. A lot of times in the pact, we have it as a sphere, like a three-dimensional shape, which I think illustrates that idea even better. And unfortunately, it has been partially co-opted by some not very cool dudes in Europe at the moment who I think don't understand the history of the chaos star, because why would you choose that symbol out of everything to stand for your fascist bullshit? I don't know. Chaos magic, like most forms of magic, has a number of kind of domains that you'll probably all be familiar with. You all shop here. You probably all know all of what I'm saying. Enchantment, you know, making your will concrete in the world. Divination, seeing that which you cannot yet see, the future, the past, the present. Invocation, where you bring the god form into the body for short-term possession. And evocation, where, like in the Goetic example, calling a form into the space for some purpose. Unique to chaos magic are sigils. Unique at one point. I think now sigils have become pretty universally known. They got pretty popular online back in the early 2000s. So a lot of people who aren't even chaos magicians will use sigils. Those can be found all the way back to in the early 20th century. Austin Osman Spare was the first person that I know of to use sigils and check off to them. And then the other one that's unique to chaos magic is an evocation technique, which is evoking a servitor. Are you guys familiar with servitors? So a servitor is a constructed thought form that can be tasked with a magical thing to do for you. It might be something that is called to action. It's under specific circumstances. I have one servitor for making cops not give me a ticket, which has worked pretty well most times. They can also be something that's kind of constantly running in the background, like software, maybe like giving you luck to find good parking spots, or it could be for anything. And servitors are very common in chaos magic, and I can give you some examples of some made by IoT members a little later on. One of the criticisms I think people often bring up about chaos magic is the question of cultural appropriation, because a lot of chaos magicians do move paradigm to paradigm. People say, well, if you're not from that culture, should you really be doing that magic? And I think that is a question that requires some sensitivity. I think personally, for appropriation to take place, there has to be harm done. So if I were, I don't know, making feather headdresses as a white woman and selling them on Etsy to rapers, I would be culturally appropriating. Like, that's fucked up. That's a sacred object. I have no business trafficking in that. On the other hand, if I read a lot of Native American mythology and become really interested in Coyote the Trickster, it doesn't harm anyone for me to explore that archetype in my personal work, or even to share my ideas about Coyote the Trickster with people I might do group magic with. I think we would start to head back toward appropriation if I started saying, well, you know, I've done a lot of Coyote magic. Do you want to learn about it? You can pay me. I'll teach you. Me, white lady. You want to know about Coyote? $100. You know, that starts to be gross again. And I will say that a valid criticism of chaos magic is that we do not have the full depth that some people will. People who spend their whole life in a paradigm. We do tend to just kind of dip in and dip out. Some of us will stay in a paradigm for a long time. I don't think that it means that our experience is less meaningful. It's just meaningful in a different way. I'll use a real life example for this one. I teach yoga. I practice Kundalini and Tantra. I've been doing so for like my entire adult life, like over 25 years. And at this point, I know a lot, but I could never know the same amount as someone who grew up in India with Indian teachers, completely submerged in the culture, completely understanding of all of this symbolic language and the meanings of everything. And I could never approach that without like moving there, learning Sanskrit, learning Tamil, learning Hindi, you know, getting a guru, living there for 20 years. Then maybe I'll start approaching somebody who has been in that culture their whole life. I don't think it's necessarily bad to not have the full understanding. It's just different. And then for recommended reading, have you guys read any Chaos Magic books? Which ones do you like?
The first magic book I ever got was Illuminates of Thanateros.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I'm a big fan of anything by Gordon White.
Mhm.
Priestess.
guys-
Yeah,
Two guys gone in one short fortnight.
yeah, that's important. But not to derail us. What else is out there? Like Alan Chapman and Dr. Bradford.
Mhm.
Quite a bit. But I think the last three mentioned are kind of less chaos magic you now.
Yeah.
Pretty easily.
Yeah. So Liber is fantastic. Probably the first Chaos Magic book that was written, and written by the person who founded the IoT, the first Chaos Magic Order, kind of the OG. I think my favorite intro to Chaos Magic book is called Condensed Chaos by Phil Hine. It's really fascinating. He has a lot of really good ideas and examples. I think Liber is great, but it is written in a very like concise way. It's not giving you a lot of examples necessarily. It's relying on the reader has to kind of choose their own adventure and get deep into it. But Condensed Chaos has a lot of information. And then anything by Dave Lee. Absolutely love Dave Lee. He's a treasure. Chaotopia, which I think you have copies here, maybe.
I do have Chaotopia.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get any of the Phil Hines books.
Really?
Was it New Falcon or Old Falcon?
Oh.
One of the Falcons. And they just went MIA. They just started sending in orders and no response. I'm like, guys, come on, you're like my Chaos Magic
Oh, no.
connection. So yeah, it's been really tough.
That's
And
wild.
I was going to ask you what your thoughts on Phil Hines were.
I mean, I don't think he identifies as a chaos magician anymore. He's been doing Kali Tantra for quite a while now. To my
Aren't we
knowledge.
all?
I know. I mean, yeah. But he, yeah, right? I'm pretty sure he's doing Tantra at this point, and is no longer, doesn't really affiliate himself with chaos magicians anymore. But his
He's got
early
great
work-
books, though. I'd
They're
like to
so
hear you
good.
those great books.
Absolutely. Condensed Chaos and Friend Chaos are both fantastic. Does anyone else have specific questions about chaos magic as like as a meta paradigm? Yeah.
I was actually going to comment earlier when you were talking about appropriation.
Mhm.
And I've had people come into the store and I listen to conversations
Mhm.
going, oh, all this is appropriation, you know? And the thing is, humanity's been learning from other cultures, and I'm not going to call it appropriation because it's not, you know? To say that you can't learn from other cultures is in itself racism.
Mhm.
You need to keep to your own kind. These people need to be over there. It's a separation of people rather than a coming together and learning from other people. So,
Yeah.
like you said, I mean, if you're sitting there profiting off of it,
Right.
you're selling dream catchers at the farmer's market or something as a white person. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's appropriation. But I think that term has really gotten.
I think it's actually awful because it has weakened the term so much that now what if I don't know, if I cook food that's not from my native culture at home, am I appropriating? Like, are we
Right.
gonna water the word down so much that it becomes essentially meaningless? I think there is real harm done to people by, in terms of like oppressor and oppressed class, but learning from each other and using magical ideas found in cultures that aren't your own, I don't think that approaches it for me.
Yes. I would say you should do that and not worry about it.
Any other questions about chaos magic?
Well, it would just be like an addendum to that, where it's, a lot of traditions don't really have direct line to its origins, so
Mhm.
like, what would be appropriate to that, since you're not really stealing from any specific culture that's still around?
That's true, yeah. A lot of older stuff. I don't think would be a corporation needs that. Did you have any questions? No, you already know all this. And then for the second half of class, we can talk about the IoT. Do you guys have any familiarity with the Magical Pact of the Illuminates of Thanateros?
And I started looking into it as soon as I saw this class go up.
Okay. Yeah. You have a little?
Only a little.
Yeah, mostly hear about the IoT.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am currently third degree. I've been a member for 5 years. In 2020, I filled out the application and got a phone call saying, "Hey, we liked your application. Let's have a chat." And at the end of the phone call, I was offered the chance to do an novitiate, which is a period of work that lasts 6 to 12 months. Typically, mine started 2 weeks before COVID shut everything down. So mine lasted quite a bit longer because we couldn't meet in person for some time. I can talk more about the work of the novitiate a little later. The IoT is a working group of chaos magicians. It's international in scope. We work by ourselves and in groups, both small and large. We have sections in 6 countries or areas at the moment: North America, South America, Switzerland, Austria, Germany, and the British Isles. But we also have members all over the world. So there are people who aren't in those countries. In some places, we have enough members that aren't quite a section, but a little bit more than a temple. We call that a satrapy. We have them in France, Spain, the Nordic countries, Greece, Poland, Bulgaria, maybe I'm missing one. New Zealand and Australia. And then the smaller groups are called temples. We have temples that are geographical in nature. I am currently the Magistra Templi of the Pacific Northwest. So we have members stretching from Northern California to Washington. We meet regularly. We also have online temples, especially convenient for people who might not have a physical temple close to them, or might be in a country that doesn't have a lot of members. And then we also have what we would call traveling temples, where members might be separated by quite some distance, but they'll travel and meet to work in whatever paradigm they're working with together. The pact is not for profit. We don't charge membership fees. We don't charge application fees. The only time we charge any money is if we're throwing a bigger event. And at that point, costs are divided very equitably among members. No one is walking away with extra money. And we really just charge for food, lodging, temple supplies. And we do our best to keep costs quite low for those members where cost might be a barrier to attendance. We typically do have scholarship funds available for some people. The pact, like many organizations, is pyramidal in structure. But the only thing you get by rising to the top part of the pyramid is more work. You don't actually receive any hidden knowledge, any secret membership to hidden cabals or anything like that. You just get more work to do and less time for your own magic. So the degrees, well, you start as a novice. Novices will be assigned a mentor to oversee their work. Novices are expected to do at least 30, possibly 1 hour, 30 minutes to an hour of work every day, starting with things like motionless meditation, concentrations, and moving on to more complex things like divination and enchantment. We expect the novice to take it seriously and not to have to be asked to do the work. So there is some amount of washout during the process where people will start and be like, I don't want to write in this journal every day. Every day, that's too much. And then they have to leave. Once the novice's work is done, the journal is read by at least 2 other members who are not their mentor to ensure that they have met all of the requirements of the work. And then they're initiated. Upon initiation, a novice becomes a neophyte, a 4th degree. The novice is essentially getting to know the pact from the outside, and the neophyte is getting to know the pact from the inside. At that point, they can come to meetings, they can join temples, they can participate online fully. We expect novices or neophytes to continue working without anyone telling them to do so. People who move on to become thirds are still studying, they're still practicing, they're still experimenting, they're still growing their own magical techniques. For those people who do become thirds, they're considered full members of the pact at that point. 4s are like dating, and 3s are like, now you're married. The 3rd degree is known as the initiate. Most people in the pact never want anything more than to be a 3rd degree. They're not going to go any higher than that because, as I said earlier, all you get upon 2 and 1 is additional workload. 3rds are expected to also continue to do magical work, develop their own techniques, and if they would like more work, then maybe they will become a 2. 2s are known as adepts. They are responsible for organizing and leading the section. So within North America, 2s would be kind of organizing larger meetings and having other leadership duties. And then 1s are known as magi, and they just coordinate internationally. So they do the work of the 2 and also additionally coordinate between sections. Am I missing anything? Oh, if you become a 2 or a 1 and you're like, this is a lot of work, I've done it for a few years, kind of sick of it, and you get to become what is known as 0 equals 5. That is essentially becoming a 3 again, but with a little added respect of having a weird title, 0 equals 5. They're essentially back to being 3s, no additional work, they just get to do magic. In addition to that, oh, also, I did say the structure is pyramidal, but a lot of structures have 1 person at the top, and the IoT has a council. So all of the 1s are considered the top of the pyramid. So there isn't just like a 1 person overseeing everyone. There are special offices also. There's the section head, the 1 person in the section that's kind of the main person to go to for leadership. There's the Magistra or Magistra Templi, who is the person that leads the temple. The archivist, we have archivists for each temple and each section that record what we do at meetings, keep notes, and store them. And then we have 2 offices that I think are unique to the pact. We have insubordinates. So everyone who is a 1, a 2, or an MT is given an insubordinate. And this person's job is to make sure that you don't blow too much smoke up your own ass. They're there to be like, tell you when your decisions are unpopular, to make sure if someone has a problem with their MT or their section head or a 1 or a 2, and they don't want to talk to them face to face, they can talk to the insub, and the insub will bring the problem to that person's attention. It's intended to be a counter to the idea that like power goes to people's heads. If you have someone who's specifically there to like yank the chair out from under you, then you can't get too cocky. The insubordinate's other role is to ensure that people who have this additional kind of administrative workload are still actually doing magic on their own and not just being in service to the organization. And then the last special office is the priest or priestess or cleric of chaos. That is someone in the pact, a third or higher, who performs things a priest might perform: weddings, funerals, exorcisms, might offer kind of lay counseling to their siblings. If their sibling is in crisis, be there to help them. Might offer magical advice, and also might do some form of like community magical outreach. And then, oh yeah, Iranian barbaric. Has anyone heard of Iranian barbaric? But we've all heard of like Enochian. Yeah. So Iranian barbaric is like the IoT's version of an unreadable barbarous language. We have a whole bunch of words. You can find a lot of them online, maybe all of them. I think the whole dictionary is online right now. They're really hard to say, but it's fun. It's like a channel of the language, the way that Enochian is said to be, where the words are received from Uronos. And there's, I don't know, over 500 of them now. They're very hard to say. So like, can use them for things like glossolalia with meaning. So they're foreign enough to our minds that it's hard to assign meaning to them, but you could still imbue them with like a magical purpose. And then I guess the last thing to talk about is what do we do as an organization and why? Why do we do it? Go ahead.
That was my big question.
What do we do and why?
What's the what? Because
What do you
it's
do?
one of the things about IoT that's always kind of confused me
Mhm.
is it's a chaos order.
It's not an order.
It strikes me
We
as
call
an
it-
order.
We call it a
So,
working group. Uh-huh.
So I'm like saying, if you were talking to me about the IoT and saying, like you should join, why should someone
Yeah,
join? the
that's actually a
IoT?
great question. And I will say not everyone should.
Fair enough.
I think we don't typically, like there's a reason that we kind of have gone unnoticed for a while in North America. We're not out there proselytizing. We're not really advertising. We don't have social media. People happen upon us. We look at their applications. If we like the application, they get a phone call. Why I joined was because I was curious after a long time practicing by myself. What would it be like to practice magic with other people who are as into weird stuff as I am? And I think the greatest value of the pact for me is that everyone who I see at a meeting has gone through a very similar novitiate process. I know that they have magical aptitude, and I know that they're down to clown. I can bring some weird magical ritual and they will be like, all right, sounds crazy, I'm in, I also really like that there are so many diverse approaches and paradigms and blendings of technique that people are using, that if I go to a meeting, I will come away with having done 20 rituals I never would have thought of on my own in paradigms that I have no experience in, but that someone else has been working in for 3 months, 6 months, a year, and they're like, okay, here's what we're doing. And I get to listen and do something strange and fun. I think magic alone is fantastic. And there's a lot of magic that I would not bring to do in a group that's very personal and private. But there is something that's really special about doing magic in a room full of people who are all as able to focus as you and all as able to get into a deep altered state as you. It transforms a working, and sometimes ritual energy can be, instead of just additive, instead of just your energy and my energy and your energy, it's just 3 energy. No, when we start going, it's 9, it's 12, it multiplies itself because we can start to feed off of each other when we're entering certain types of altered trance state. It really can amplify everything. So that's my meandering answer of why I joined the IoT. I think that people who might not like it would be people who aren't funny, people who are dumb. No. I think people who want a lot of strict rules will have a bad time. If you come to the IoT thinking that we're going to give you a reading list and you're going to be tasked with very specific work to do to become a better magician, you're not going to find that. The work of the novice is very self-directed. If you're familiar with Liber Null, if you can recall Liber MMM in the beginning of the book, it essentially outlines some practices for a beginner magician. Motionless meditation, concentrating on an imagined image, on a sound, and on a visual object. And then working through divination, enchantment, invocation, evocation. So sure, there is a kind of a curriculum, but it is up to the magician, to the novice, to decide how to go about these things largely. And maybe your mentor will say, oh, you might like this book once they get to know you, but they're not going to be just handing you homework and grading it, you know? Yeah, and then what we do when we get together is we typically do a whole bunch of magic. Everyone who comes to meetings brings a ritual or 2, explains it to the group. We all throw down. We go smoke a cigarette or a joint, come back in, do another one. Talk a lot of theory, like joke around. It's great, great fun. Any other questions about the IoT? No? Are all my secrets disappointing? Nothing new revealed? I can actually talk to you about some of the magic. Typically, one of our oaths is that we don't disclose other people's workings, things that we've done together. But some of the workings of the IoT have been made public by their creators. So I'll talk to you a little about some of those. I mentioned servitors earlier. One servitor that you can find online is called Kawapor. If you look on YouTube, Dave Lee, who's written a bunch of amazing books, has a really beautiful guided meditation for Kawapor. This is a healing servitor. It was invented in the 90s. It like chokes me up to talk about because it's so beautiful. It was invented in the 90s by a temple called Templi in London. My dear friend Peter Maston devised this working where they installed the servitor beneath the dance floor of a gay nightclub. This is at the height of the AIDS crisis. And before and after the club opened, the temple would come and do ritual in the club space so that Kawapor could heal the many HIV positive dancers who would come and dance. And there were a lot of cases of remission reported where T-cell counts increased and even Kaposi sarcoma was reversed. So it was a really powerful healing working. And I have done workings with Kawapor. I wrecked my knee in a motorcycle accident in October, and it's fine now. And I credit Kawapor. So I would definitely check out that YouTube video. And then the other is Keatron breathwork that Dave Lee and some others devised in London. This is Dave Lee was practicing a lot with like group breathwork and visualization, and he and some others kind of uncovered this magical technology or invented it, in which if we were to form a circle, you make eye contact with the person across the circle from you. Both of you breathe in a specific pattern, And I'm visualizing breathing your energy up through your body and into me and out of my feet and back into you in a circle. And you're doing the same. So we're getting circles going like this. But then that we're in a circle, we're breathing these circles. And I expand my awareness to include the people on either side of you. So then I'm doing 3 loops into myself. And I'm also giving out 3 loops into other people. And then you expand that awareness to include everyone in a circle. So everyone is breathing in this kind of torus shape. This is incredibly effective way to hit an altered state. And we've also found it to be incredibly useful for healing magic as well. There have been a number of instances where people's very intense illnesses and injuries have been greatly helped by this working. And then on a less serious note, there's Go Flow Wolfog, which you can find in Condensed Chaos, which is a cool cat riding a skateboard. It's a servitor, and it's intended to help you be able to travel smoothly. So if you're stuck on a subway car and the train's not moving, you can just do a little internal, call up Go Flow Wolfog, and hopefully that train starts rolling. But that one's been around forever, and it's kind of fun. My kids draw pictures of it all. So that's some of the various things. The kinds of magic that we do range from like very silly, like Go Flow Wolfog, to very serious, like trying to save someone's life. Yes.
Question from online. Are there any examples of trying on selves or trying on paradigms?
I mean, sure. Absolutely. So if I go to a meeting, I will be kind of, as every ritual I go to, I will be stepping into a new paradigm. Often there will be paradigms that I don't necessarily work in. I don't do angelic magic, for example. But if someone at the meeting is like, I'm doing an angel ritual, I'll go. I will believe in angels for a minute, sure. So that would be an example of stepping into a paradigm that I personally don't really have an interest in angel magic, but I'll do it. They're too scary. Believe me with demons. I don't want anything to do with those angels. And then as far as the flexibility of self, I mean, I can talk about personal examples. During my novitiate, I did a lot of work with what I would call ego magic, and kind of taking account of my personal conception of myself and thinking particularly about things that I found to be flaws in myself or detriments, things keeping me from being some idealized future perfect me, right? And I would write down all of these flaws. Oh, I'm vain, I'm lazy, I'm kind of spoiled. And then I would think of times where those attributes were simply not the case. There have been plenty of times in my life I was vain. There have been plenty of times in my life I wasn't lazy or spoiled. So for every example of a negative quality I could think of, I could pretty easily think of a time when it simply wasn't true. And that illustrates this idea that the self is not a fixed entity. We have patterns that we repeat to ourselves, patterns that we turn into belief, and it is through that belief that it becomes true. If you say, I've got a really hot temper, if you piss me off, I'm going to start yelling. Well, that's the pattern that you're telling yourself. That's the belief that you have about yourself. If you say, I take a few minutes to react, I'm pretty cool and collected. You say that long enough, you will mold yourself into that kind of person. And I think that I would call myself evidence of that, but y'all didn't know me 10 years ago. Any other questions online?
None at the moment.
Okay. Any other questions in the room? No.
I was really surprised that there was an ITO here. The first time I knew it was your first talk on the cast magic thing.
Oh yeah, last year.
Yeah. How has ITO always been around? Has it sort of waxed waned over the years?
I don't know how specific I can get, but I will say that absolutely, like any group, membership in one area or another is going to wax and wane. People move away, people move here. You know, temples rise and fall. That the Pacific Northwest has been a temple for longer than I've been a member. I think quite a bit longer. There are other temples that are long-standing. There are other temples that are kind of growing at the moment. So that's not a very concise answer. No.
Yeah, I think the last time I heard anything about them was early 2000s, and somebody said, "Oh, I think there's maybe a few in London, but I don't think they're really around anymore." So
That's what everyone thinks.
Yeah.
I just read Liber Null and I was like, IoT, that sounds cool. I wonder if they're online. Oh, this website looks like shit. But there's an application page. The website does not look like shit anymore, but it did.
You took care of that?
Oh, not me. That's not my purview. No, no.
I mean, if IoT is anything like OTO, as soon as you point out something's a problem, it becomes your job to fix it. So,
yeah,
you know.
no, I didn't. I would. They don't want me on webmaster duty. Absolutely not. Oh, I wish that you guys had more questions, but if you don't, you don't.
Is there anything, this is what, I mean, outside of Peter Carroll, you know, Phil Hines, the big names,
Uh-huh.
is there anything in any of the books in the Chaos Magic curriculum that you would want to call attention to?
I mean, beside those Phil Hine books that you can't get, anything by Dave Lee, though. Chaotopia is fantastic. He's been publishing forever. You can also see him if you're curious about the history of the IoT. He has a great talk on YouTube, I think, with Julian Bain, also a member who I think might have the book of Baphomet, who wrote that.
Mhm.
So they talk kind of about the history, the early days, and like a lot more information about the formation of the IoT and what was going on back then. For other books, I don't know. A lot of my personal magic is not informed by chaos magic books. It's informed by things like theater and dance and neurolinguistic programming. And I don't know. Visual Magic by Jan Fries.
Mhm. Mhm.
That one's really good. He's not a chaos magician, but his ideas are really cool. I did a lot of like ecstatic trance work when I was doing my novitiate. So I think one of the cool things about this paradigm, this meta paradigm, is that you can draw inspiration from anything in your life. If you're into dance, you can absolutely use dance as the lens and as the engine for the magic that you're doing. If you're into visual art, you can use the visual art as the nucleus of your personal paradigm. If you're into computers, if like really anything that is your thing can also be your magic. And I think that's what's really cool about it. It's such a small group and nobody wants to talk to me. No?
What's the difference in Discordianism and like the Eris?
Oh, Discordianism, I mean, Discordianism is about Eris. It is silly. It's very silly. I really like it. I've been in some very fun Discordian ritual.
Yeah.
But chaos magic is not just Eris. It's not,
Right.
we worship the goddess of discord, you know? And I think Discordianism, hence the name, is about the goddess of discord.
Right.
But Discordianism is super fun. Very silly.
So there was I see that quote pretty often in regards to class that everything is
Yeah,
or
nothing is true. Everything is permitted. Mhm.
So that's kind of like a interesting concept. I don't
Yeah.
how is that?
So I would tie that back to the avoidance of dogma, right? We cannot be certain of the truth. If you and I see an event unfold, we might have very different retellings of the story of what happened. There might be an objective truth outside of us, but neither one of us is able to see it, right? We have our own biases and perceptions that are clouding us from seeing an objective truth. So for all intents and purposes, we do not have access to the truth if it exists. And so that's the nothing is true part. For everything is permitted, that goes back to the concept that there are no rules for chaos magic besides those which are self-imposed. So if you personally are like, I don't fuck with painful magic, then that's your rule, then don't do it. If I'm like, I'll put a hex on anybody, then that rule doesn't apply to me. You know what I mean? So that's how I would kind of break that down to be like a little bit more explained than just the snappy little nothing is true, everything is permitted, which sounds very edgy. Anything else? No? Well, if you guys want to talk more in the less formal way, hang out for a little while and feel like, I don't know, did you learn anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe not. You have questions about the IoT?
No, not that.
Okay.
I mean, I have lots of questions, so I'm sure you can tell me.
I mean, maybe you could try.
What's the secret emotion?
No, absolutely cannot tell you the signs and passwords, babe.
Yeah. I'm not great. All the stuff I don't ask, stuff that I wouldn't be able to tell you if you asked
Yeah.
back.
Just want to know that
Yeah.
inside scoop. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you.